Green. Hi, everybody. Well, here we are again with our Where Are We Now series that, well, I just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us today while we try to figure out what's happening and what to do every day. Heather Elder brought us this idea of producing a webinar a million years ago now. It was really 7 weeks ago, actually, or this is our 8th episode, so it was 2 months ago now, about partnering with her to host the webinar. It's a series that will continue, so please continue to tune in. Also, if you wanted to check out the past webinars that we've done, they are on the Workbook YouTube channel. Though please do keep in mind that they're timely. And so what we were talking about 7, 8 weeks ago is feeling vastly different than what we are talking about on a weekly basis. So they really are meant to be consumed in a timely fashion. Mm-hmm. And so our panel today, which I'm very excited about, is first up is Steve Babuljak. He's a photographer for stills and motion. He's a San Francisco shooter. He was raised in San Francisco since the age of 5, and he started off as a photojournalist. Some of his clients are UCSF, Stanford Health, see, I'm tripping over things already, BECU, Fannie Mae, and Lacey. Just a little personal thing about Steve is he's currently getting overrun by his 6-month-old German mixed puppy during shelter in place. And then next up is Richard Borghi. Richard works primarily on illustration and motion design projects of all kinds, usually from concept to finish. One of his favorite aspects of visual communications is the conceptual process, being it selling a product or conveying the intricacies of a complex article. Some of his clients have been Scientific American, White Ops, McKinsey, Siegel and Gale, Olympus, Avid, and Sony Music. Next up is Darren Carroll. Darren Carroll is a photographer. Some of his clients include Dick's Sporting Goods, Golf Galaxy, Parsley Energy, the PGA of America, and the United States Tennis Association. He lives in Austin, Texas, and he's an avid runner and rower, single scull. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure many, many people do. Usually from, I lost my spot. Solitary fitness pursuits. He is also a barbecue addict, and in addition to smoking briskets and eating all types of barbecue, he's also working on a personal project involving portraits of Texas's new crop of young and innovative pitmasters. Next up is Jamie Skiles. He's the president, creative director of Phoenix Design Works. He's done branding and or advertising for 50 of the Fortune 500 consumer brands, all major league sports, and 500 collegiate brands, both university and athletics. He was born and raised in Texas, and he moved to New York City. He's lived and worked in and around New York City for the past 25 years, loves dogs. He has a Bernese Mountain Dog and a Jack Russell Terrier, either one of which may make an appearance today in the show. And then last but not least, Heather Elder. She's an artist representative. She's been an agent for 20 years. She hosts the Dear Art Producer podcasts, writes a blog about the industry, and hosts a site for freelance art producers. Right now, she's surrounded by everything and everyone that she needs, including 2 Goldens and a bearded dragon. And then there's me. I've been with Workbook for 6 years. I love my job, which is basically helping people succeed. Something personal about me is that I have a black belt, so watch out. And that I worked really, really hard for. And I love my Christmas tree with a bizarre devotion, not easily explained, so I will not try to. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time today to share your stories with us. And so I'd love to start off with Steve. Steve, that you have done something really interesting, and it's sort of a stock site, but you call it Unstock, which I thought was extraordinarily clever. And I was hoping that maybe, you know, we're going to explore what a lot of our artists are doing right now in our lockdown or in the COVID restrictions right now. And Steve, you had come together with this great idea, and I was hoping you could share it with us.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi, and thanks, Heather, for joining us together here. It was really flattering to be honored to come on the show. Yeah, so I had a long list of to-dos during this COVID lockdown time, and one of the items was figure out stock. I'd never really took much of a look at it, and I started calling all my friends who had done it, and I started Googling all the big agencies, and it was really discouraging. I'm not gonna lie, like seeing the amount of payoff photographers get for the large volume of work that they have to do, or they've had to do it for years and years and years. But I started seeing a little trend of photographers that I admire were doing sort of self-stock, and it was stuff on their site, kind of casually done. I honestly saw Heather Elder was putting out those emails, and I was like inspired by that. And it just got me thinking like, oh, what if I were to sell my own stock through my own site? I know it's, it's not a lot of eyeballs and it's not a huge collection of work as if a major agency would have. But I thought I had some really unique content that was just sitting around, not really getting any traction, a lot of personal projects, a lot of outtakes, things that I really felt near and dear to as a photographer. And so I said, well, I'll just, create my own little portal, put it out there, send it as a way to get in front of my clients, kind of, Heather, I've taken a note out of your book to how can we be of service to people right now without saying, hey, hire me, hire me. And I really wanted to do that with my clients who liked my style of imagery. Say, hey, here's this collection of stuff. If you like my work in the past, maybe there's something here that can be useful for you now. And then I thought, well, what if I were to get a bunch of other friends that had similar collections and we all put it in one portal versus like, someone coming to my site and someone else's site, and they don't have much time when they're looking for imagery. And so literally in the middle of the night, I think it just popped in my head, oh, this is like unstock. It's the not stock. Because a lot of my images and the group of folks that I'm with, they're not what you would typically see on a stock site. And what sort of was unique about it and what I'm hoping will work is that a lot of photographers like me just don't have the time and bandwidth or the archive that they can go back and put 10,000 images up on an agency. But they have some unique work that might be their best friends, it might be their family, it might be agency signed models. And the way the system works that I've set up is that and I can show you here on the site, but let me share my screen here just to kind of make it a little bit easier. But it enables sort of kind of a unique way of directly licensing the image through the photographer. So I don't want to be an agency. This is simply a portal that if you're like, oh, I really like this style of work here that Smita shoots. She shoots a lot of kids and her own family. And the imagery is just beautiful that, these are her kids. Does she want to put them on a stock site and have someone download it and have no idea where it goes? No, we'd rather have it be a relationship that's built with an agency or a client that really wants something unique and personal. Another friend of mine has food that I want to put on my wall. It looks like art to me, Nader Corey. And, this is phenomenal work that would normally, be way too much work to do and get every single model release done. And this way it's kind of creates a relationship. Someone could say, hey, I love this picture of this runner. Can you send me more? Or, we need to do a fishing profile. Send me the rest of the take on this. And that way it's not just inundated with 1,000 pictures of some variation. Travel stuff, beautiful landscapes. We know we're not going to hit all the niches that people need, but I feel like the collection is going to grow and we'll really have sort of a unique place. I would love to start a trend, where photographers that have a really tight curated group of images can put their work up and have a relationship with the people looking for them. It's not just like, hey, click download, pay a cheap price, move out the door. And so what this enabled me to do was we sent out a blast. I've been sending it out on my social channels. Say, hey, here's what we have. Each time I add someone, we're going to send out a new blast. And this enabled me to stay in front of my clients without being salesy, but more like, hey, there's some great imagery. We know we can't do big productions, but we have this amazing collection. Maybe that's of use to you all. And, we're not looking for thousands and thousands of hits, right? I just need a couple every year that maybe they want to, have a very specific license and they have some money for that. That would make it totally worth it for me. Or even if it's just a way to like see some beautiful work, right? Here's 10, maybe 15 photographers that I'll have on here eventually, maybe more. And it becomes like a little source book, but each portal goes back to the photographer. So unlike an irregular agency, that would be selling stock keeps it within them. I want people to be able to market through the site, and it's just a portal to get that out into the world.
So when you're marketing it, are you're marketing it to your list, or is everyone in the collective giving you their marketing list as well?
Yeah, no, initially I sort of sent it out to mine, and then I'm asking each of the photographers on the group to sort of send it out to their own with the right sort of timing, because we might have some crossover with different agencies. But yeah, the idea is that they can then present it to their clients, stay in front of their clients as well. And it sort of becomes, we're all this big marketing arm. We're stronger together versus these, individuals just trying to survive.
So each person is actually doing a blast and marketing for the whole thing. It's not just you in a central.
Right. It's not on my shoulders. And that was the whole point of the collective. It is a collective. It's not just my project, right? It's our group, and hopefully we'll continue to grow and add more and spread the word, right? I love the shift in the way people think of stock, where it's gone royalty free, cheaper, lower quality, just inundated with images. Instead, we want to drive it up with better images, more unique, stuff you've never seen before, stuff you can't get anywhere else, and have a relationship through that. Like, hey, well, what else is happening for you all? What else can we find for you? What else can we provide for you? What else can we pull together that's not on the site that maybe we have in our archive?
So I have another question in that, are you getting some buyer response? Are you getting some inquiries that are feeling hopeful?
Yeah, I definitely got no direct sales just yet, but people, I literally launched it last week, but I did get some responses back from producers and creatives that I've been reaching out to, and they love the idea. People are excited about something that, isn't the normal. They're frustrated with stock agencies, right? Because there's just so many images and they have to spend hours. And, I'm not saying we're the end all be all. It's a very limited collection, but we want to be that little needle in the haystack that you can find and be really excited about. And I've also loved what Heather's brought up with her group is like, hey, maybe this kind of work will inspire your project, right? You see something on our site that maybe isn't fitting a box that you already have that, oh, I need this particular image, but you see something on the site that says, hey, we can create a project around this existing work. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. Heather, shared about with her stock collective. And I hope that takes off. I hope we all win in that way.
That's what I was just going to chime in and commend you for is, I feel like we've all been in the business for a long time, and it's very solitary, and apologies for the dogs barking in the background. And it's very isolating, and it's also incredibly competitive. And something I've been seeing rising to the top over the last couple of months is photographers getting together and recognizing that they're stronger together, and communities, not just photographers, but producers and reps and, everybody in the industry recognizing that you don't have to be out for yourself. If you can be out promoting each other, you're a resource, you're a solution, and you're helping somebody else out. Because if we can get our industry working and shooting and people choosing photography again, that is a win for all of us. And I think that's great, that what you're doing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I muted myself. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I wanted to move to Jamie right now to talk about this mask project, which is, my colleague had let me know that you were doing this, and it just sounded so wonderful. So I was hoping that you could just expand upon that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to start by saying thank you for having us. And I think that this is a really great idea because we get to see each other, we get to share, we get to learn, and that's really a nice thing. So thanks. When this first hit, of course, like everybody, we were like, nah. But once we calmed down a little, my better half, Amy, realized, oh yeah, there's a way we can help. She, in our community, which is South Orange, Maplewood, Soma for short, we're right outside the city. We started working on making masks. We joined in with others. We have relations with friends who are nurses that work at some of the hospitals around here that have been hit the hardest. So then we started delivering those masks. And then out of that came the idea that, well, maybe we can apply our given skill set, which is branding, illustration, graphics, and see if there's a way that we can't manifest that to help with the overall battle. So let me see if I can share my screen. Here we go. And then if that comes up. So the first thing I would do is show you, this is just a press release that kind of details what I was just talking about. That's Amy, and here she is sewing, and these are some of the other people in the community. So making these masks and distributing them to the hospital, that was coming at a time when, you know, that was a real problem. They just didn't have the protection. We then got into creating merchandise that looks like this. And, you know, for those of us who are, I like to have a second degree of brand exploration. So the Latin that goes around the perimeter says, bring back the kiss, bring back the love. You know, just based on the fact that we can't touch each other. We can't, you know, just trying to bring some human contact back. So all of these things got manifested in a storefront. We got our charitable giving verification designation, and we're able to give 25% of every purchase to the American Nurses Foundation. Teespring, this is a Teespring store, so they'll take maybe, you know, 50 to 60% to manufacture, host the store, deal with customer service, print on demand, and ship it. So that's awesome. It lets us just worry about creating. When you go to a specific collection, it looks like this. Then that became, okay, we have friends that are doing a Zoom brunch every weekend. And so we developed merchandise for that, got them into giving to the nurses. So all this money goes to support our nurses. This is for the local sewing group, Soma Sewing Volunteers. And I'll unshare now. So, you know, as we're going through this, we're just constantly coming. We have 5 more ideas, concepts, groups of stuff that we're going to put out there. People seem to be moved by it. There is interaction. They are giving back. You know, I was talking with my buddy Ross Sutherland. He and I have worked together for 35 years. And so there's the idea that whether it's a t-shirt or a coffee mug is almost incidental. It's the idea that we are all in a place where we, you know, amongst all the other things we're going through, it's tough to think, I want to help, but how do I help? You know, if I can't leave my house, how do I go help and do my part as a human being? And so I think when people are given the opportunity to support nurses, which is something that's, you know, should be universal to all of us, that's the real thrust here, you know. Now, and I also think too, in terms of dealing, you know, in talking to our regular clients, we've had a number of clients who decided to go ahead and launch the branding work that we were doing, even though it won't come into use until this is all done. Those proved to be really optimistic and heroic moments, just to give people a sense that we're going to continue, you know, that we will move on. And so I was very happy to see that go ahead. But I think in terms of how we talk to our regular clients throughout all of this, we communicate a lot through Emma, through, you know, email, posting stuff, and through our social. Most of the people I'm connected to on social media are people I work with. And I think the main message right now is just compassion. You know, when we talk to our clients, we just say, hey, because they know what we do. And, you know, but the real issue is just to say, we're here for you. If there is a charitable cause that they want us to help with, we're happy to jump in. You know, if there are things that need to be done that they, you know, maybe they can't get into their office, they don't have access to their files, we can help them with that and share things to Dropbox. So it's really just a message of compassion, you know. society, that we're all here, we're all in this together, and we're going to get through this. Oops. Are you?
I'm so sorry. I muted because my cat
that's okay.
walked through the room. But I wanted to say that Amy Skiles it wrote in onto our board and said, to date, we have distributed 17,000 masks. That's pretty impressive, and such a, I mean, you were just discussing compassion, that hits the mark. And then some. So I just wanted to, put in a little footnote from, as you mentioned, your better half, although I doubt that. I'm sure you're quite even, but that was a nice number that I thought I would share. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I wanted to move on and talk about some client work. So that was a pretty good segue there. And I'd love to go to Richard. In regards to, the project that you told me about with American Scientific or Scientific America. I'm sure I'm saying it incorrectly, but would you share that with us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, thanks a lot, Heidi, and it's really great to be here with so many other talented people, and I appreciate it. I think it's a really good idea that Workbook is doing this, and it's a way to stay connected. So yeah, the Scientific American project came about when the whole COVID issue was taking off, and I had reached out to Michael, the creative director there, and just said I just wanted to be part of it. Like I wanted to help, and I wanted to try and come up with some images that maybe could be useful in terms of getting people to wash their hands or to, people just to do the right thing or stay home. Or
I'm sorry to ask, but when was this?
It was, I don't remember exactly when. It was pretty early on when all this stuff, it was in the early weeks of when things just really started to ramp up. And I'm friends with Michael on Facebook, and I sent him a note and said, hey, I really want to do something. I want to help somehow. And then I think it was like a week or two later, he sent an email and said, hey, I think I have something for you. And the thing that was really, really nice about that was I then just started creating some images that were just about the virus and pandemic in general. And then I sent all that work over. And while I was like right before I did this drive from Brooklyn to Minnesota, where I am now. So it's funny, I just did all this work, and then I got in my car and drove and kind of hope for the best. And then I got word that they loved the stuff that I did, and they expanded the project. So I guess it speaks a little bit to kind of creating your own reality a little with work, and not just only doing the small thing, but maybe really running with things and going above and beyond. And then sometimes it expands. So I'll show you some of that work. Let me try to share my screen. Okay. Whoops. I'll just do this one at a time. So it was there. We did the cover as well and animated it, but that one's not published yet, so I won't show that. But this was a piece about I think 5 different articles on inside the magazine, and this was about the woman that searched out and was able to identify the initial virus. Mm. And then this is a screenshot of how they use this one on their site. It was real fun to see this and how nice and big it is. And I always like that as an illustrator, partly because you just like to see it big, but you also then know that they really enjoyed your work and that they like it. And it's kind of like, oh, cool. So this was an article about how do these things end. This was about searching for a vaccine. And I got to credit Michael Marek on this idea. Like he wanted to do something with the searchlight, or spotlight or something. And so that was that one. And this was for basically all the healthcare professionals. And well, I'm sorry, no, this isn't that one. This was about searching for drugs to fight the illness once you have it. And this is the one that was about psychological trauma on the doctors and the healthcare workers. And I remember reading something about a tidal wave in this article, I think. So that's that for the Scientific American. Was there, I have a lot of other things to show too if you want, but if you have some questions about that.
No, I just was interested in how you saw this need and then you reached out to your client sort of proactively. You and I had a private conversation about you always have to ask, you always have to be bold, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of where I'm leaning into wanting to hear a little more from you.
Okay.
About you're a teacher and you were telling me that what you tell your students. Where are you teaching exactly?
Right now I'm teaching at the School of Visual Arts in New York, and I teach at Pratt in New York. And then I also teach in other semesters, I teach in the FIT MFA program in New York City as well. So a lot of teaching. I'll share my screen again, if that's okay.
Sure.
And then I'll speak to some of the things we're talking about. So in terms of getting work, there's a Instagram feed called 36 Days of Type, which is basically, it's kind of a challenge to do a letter form every day. And so I just was working on this while I was on this trip, and it keeps me busy and it keeps my work out in front of people. And it's a fun thing to do. It's a fun exercise. Mm-hmm. So that's 36 Days of Type on Instagram is a good thing. And then this is from last year. I did the same thing based on like HVAC type, but this is all self-generated. This is me just making stuff. And this is me feeling like, I just like to do it and I want to make it, but I also think it's just a good way to stay busy and keep my work in front of people. So that was that one.
Are you actively marketing? Are you sending this out in email form? Are you just utilizing Instagram? Are you, how, oh, that's so cool.
Mostly it's Instagram and Facebook, and I need to be better at sending the things out, but I do. Sometimes I do even print mailers as well as emailers. And this is the one from School of Visual Arts. So I saw Gail Anderson as the keynote speaker at the Icon conference, and part of her message was sometimes you just have to ask. And that was funny because, it's this big conference, and then she did the speech, and then, you just have to ask. And then we were all kind of breaking to all go meet and have our kind of coffee hour or whatever that they do there. It's very social. And I just kind of introduced myself. We had met, or we knew each other through work over the years, but we never met personally. And I just said, hey, I would love to do one of the posters, because she assigns these School of Visual Arts posters. So this is that folder, right? There's me. So this has been really fun to see these all over New York City and have all my friends send me pictures and whatnot. And so that was that project, but really it was me just asking. And this was for me, this is a great thing, because this is the style that I really like to play with. And basically it was just great. It was a lot of people see it, and tons of creative freedom and a decent budget. And so that doesn't happen all that often. In terms of more about self-generating, there's a client that I have, I collaborate with them, White Rhino in the Boston area, and they've been really good to me over the years, and super creative and really wonderful group to work with. And he had sent me a note on I think Facebook that said, oh, he loved this toy when he saw it. And he said that was one of his favorite things. So I put this page together, and I thought, well, the Rhino, let's make one. I want to make one of these things. And so I kind of put this pitch page together, and then I said, let's make a Rhino, and we can have it do a bunch of different things and have different attachments and whatnot for it. And anyway, so he liked that idea, and now we're moving forward with that. They're doing things with augmented reality. So I think, hoping the idea is to make this Rhino, I think, do different things on people's desktops. So keep an eye out for that with White Rhino. Yeah, and let's see, this is a job that I did while I was on this trip, and this is for Yale Alumni Magazine. And it was I'm just toggling between two images. So it's about data loss and how we don't really have a good system set up for keeping track of our data as technology moves forward. And this is my brother, John, and his son, Jake, and I'm in John's house right now. They've graciously let me use this cabin while I was here. And John's an awesome photographer, taught me a lot of what I know. And let's see, mechanical engineering. This is another client that I'm working with while I'm here. And one of the things about this that I thought was good about being proactive and self-generating is the creative director here, Frank. I was working with him and we were going to do a cover. And then I said, you know, I would love to do more. Let's do some more things on the inside. And I'll often say that as an idea, especially building these 3D models. It seems like, why not, you know, just get a little bit more mileage out of it instead of only, you know, doing it as one thing. And let me stop sharing. Let's see.
Very cool.
So,
Thank you so
but
much.
what I said, hey, let's do some more. And then the next thing I know, Frank came back to me and said, hey, the editor loves it. We want you to do every other cover for the year. And I was like, that's fantastic. I love working in series and I love having a kind of a regular thing like that. And it's just, Frank's been a lot of fun to work with as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Speaking of self-generated content, I want to go to Darren right now because you have this really cool series. And I just would love for you to talk about that and how it's kind of gotten out into the universe and so on.
Sure. First of all, I'm a sports and fitness photographer, but a lot of what I do depends on shooting professional sporting events or the existence of professional sports. And as we all know, as of mid-March, that just doesn't happen anymore. So I am on the road a lot, 250 days a year usually. All of a sudden, here I am at home. And I have every single day that I had booked through July 1st, gone. I'm not going anywhere. What the heck am I going to do? I'm also, as you noted earlier, I'm a runner and I'm a rower. I enjoy getting outside. I live in Austin. They call it Fit City because we love to stay in shape around here. But what I like to do is solitary stuff. So when we started closing down, it was really hard to run because if you went out to our trail where everybody runs, you had thousands of people shoulder to shoulder, panting, sweating, whatever. That just didn't seem like a good idea to me. The boathouse was closed, obviously. So all I was doing was getting out and taking walks around the neighborhood, walking the dogs to stay in shape, whatever. But inside, I'm sitting in my office going, well, I can go through my stock stuff. I can redo my website. I'm trying to make busy work for myself. But I wish that I could have something to do. And so one day I got up to get myself a cup of coffee. I looked out my living room window and there was my wife in the garage taking an online yoga class. I'm going to share my screen with you here to show you what the impetus for the project was. So I saw this picture and I thought to myself, well, she can't be the only one. And maybe if I go on those walks and I make them a little bit longer and I bring a camera with me and I start talking to the people that I run into in my neighborhood, maybe we could make something out of this. And so I started doing that. And I found out that everybody was in the same situation that I was in, stranded at home. They couldn't go to their gym. They didn't want to go to the public places where you could still go to exercise, but they were still trying to find a way to stay sane and to stay in shape. And so this is all just stuff that I've shot walking around my neighborhood, walking the dogs, going out for 2 hours in the afternoon, saying I got to get out of the house for a little while. And I just run across all of these people and just kind of chat with them about what I'm doing. And they think it's it's great that somebody's taking an interest in what they're doing. And this is what I've come up with.
So you put it on your social media, I would assume.
Yes. Yeah, I started doing Instagram posts and things like that. I'm not really on Facebook, but a little bit of Twitter here and there and Instagram. And, Heidi, I know you don't want this to sound like a plug, and but it's the truth. You and Mary send out regular emails to people saying, what are you up to? Show us what you're up to. And so I responded to that saying, well, this is what I've been doing while I've been sitting at home. And the next week it went up on Workbook Weekly. So in terms of marketing myself and my work, I've decided that while things are so economically weird, I'm not going to take on any new expenditures, but I'm going to work within the commitments that I already have, like with Workbook or with other web marketing sites and things like that, that are already paid up, that, they're there to be utilized. And so that's what I decided to do with this. And this has given me fresh content to do that marketing with, which has been great.
Well, since you mentioned it, I'd love for you to finish the story, which, you shared it with me the other day.
Right.
And again, you weren't invited for this reason, but it was certainly wonderful to hear.
I mean, when you called me about doing this is when I told you the story that I'm about to tell. So yeah, it had nothing to do with it. But I do a lot of work for a big sporting goods retailer on the national level, and I've been working with them and their ad agency for 8 or 9 years now. And I got a phone call from a producer at the agency, and this would have been Monday or Tuesday, whenever the Workbook Weekly thing dropped. But I got a phone call from the producer at the agency saying, we are going to approach the company, the client, with a bunch of ideas, and we were just kind of sitting around spitballing a little bit. And one of the things we came up with was, how can we market our fitness equipment and things like that to people who are under a stay-at-home order? What are people doing to stay in shape or whatever? And they said, wouldn't you know it, we get out of this meeting and 2 hours later, our creative director sends around a group email with this Workbook newsletter saying, look what Darren's doing. This is exactly what we need. And so, we've just been in preliminary discussions about how it might work or what we could do with it, but just being able to get myself out there is keeping me in touch with clients and potential clients.
I love that story, obviously. Yeah. It's a good one. And when you told it to me, I gleefully said, I can't wait to tell Mary who handles your account and so on. So thank you for sharing that. Sure. It's a nice, it's certainly a nice validation, but it's also a really nice story about how you took, a struggle of yours and turned it into something that fed a couple parts of you, Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear that you've also figured out your own workout routine now. But that you took, lemons and you made some lemonade, that's what this whole thing is about, right? That's what all of your stories are about, which is, just so heartening, really. I want to move into, Heather, I know that you have been hustling. I see stuff from you and your artists everywhere because, I'm connected to you, but also it's really impressive. And I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about, the inspirational work that your roster is doing right now.
Sure. So when this all started, I had to really think about what our messaging was going to be and talk to all the artists that we represent and see what they felt comfortable with. And for some reason, being in this crisis really kind of kicked me in gear in terms of what I wanted to put out there and how I wanted to position myself. So, I felt like it was my job to keep the train going, and our artists could kind of jump on and off whenever they wanted to. And I thought it was a perfect time, and our messaging needed to be about solutions-oriented issues. I felt like anything else that I would be putting out there, while it was okay to do so, and people were saying they liked just getting nice pictures and nice things, for me, I just didn't want to, I wanted to save that for later when people were a little bit more open to that kind of inspiration, and I wanted to be solutions oriented. So in order to continue to message that, we had to come up with a lot of different solutions. And the first thing that we came up with was what Steve said, and I can share my screen as well, was, hold on a second, let me get you guys there, was our stock collections. And we did just exactly what Steve said. Over the weekend, we mobilized and created a section of our site where we could put all of the collections of work that we were doing that could be purchased for stock, but also could inspire. I had the idea, I mean, it's not my idea, but I was thinking along the lines of like, stock doesn't have to be insert image here, right? I need a picture of a father and a son fishing on a deck. It could be, gosh, I have a campaign for a, for a client and I need a collection of images. Well, we've got tons of libraries of images, already together. So that was really very exciting to be able to put all of those in one place. So, and we've gotten a lot of great interest, and it also gives me a good excuse to stay in touch with people and, share each individual collection with them. And people have been appreciative of that. So we've gotten a few sales, which has been great. The other thing that we've been doing, just land on this page for just a second, but we've been all along the idea of solutions, being solutions oriented, is that a few of our photographers, and including myself, have been doing some webinars separate from this. And they're individual webinars that we bring to our clients on how to successfully create motion and still work together. What does the future of production look like? How does producing with a smaller crew influence? So we've kind of had the thought that, well, none of us are making money right now. So, money is not the currency, but karma is the currency right now. And we're putting ourselves out there in a way that is incredibly genuine and true to who we are as people and businesses. And we've been really getting a very positive response from that. We also have some photographers have been about own business and only
I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Is going to be a sure. Oh, there's a delay. Shoot, like a bad delay.
Yeah, it was enough. I wanted to create a timeout moment for you.
Okay, what do you think I should do? Should I refresh my Zoom and hang up and call back, or should we just move on?
Seems to me that you're good now. I didn't want you to.
Okay.
Well, you can go ahead now.
Okay, if that happens again, I can just log off and log back on and you can move on from me. But anyway, so Andy Anderson really thinks that portrait is going to be a very strong way to communicate visually, especially as we go back into production where we might be only able to have 4 or 5 people on set at a time, whether it be a studio set or a location set. So he's been going around town photographing from a very, from a safe distance, the people in his community. He lives in a small town in Idaho. He has for forever. And he's been photographing those people that he knows. This one is one of my favorites. Really trying to show this idea of this shared humanity that we're all experiencing right now. Cade Martin, on the other hand, has been doing a series. And we wrote a story about it, and a way for him to stay connected to his community, but also to reach out on a more global scale and to his clients and people that he knows to see if they want him to take their portrait right now. So it's his way of just staying connected and trying to do something nice.
This is through. I'm sorry.
Yep.
You froze up again. These images are taken through Zoom. Is that correct?
Through Zoom. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Through Zoom.
Okay.
And so that's been a really powerful way for him to stay busy and stay connected and feel like he's contributing. The other thing that we've been doing, just to be kind of solutions oriented, that the workbook has also been doing, was this idea. We call it create in place workbook. You guys call it produce in place. But regardless of what it is, we have, and ironically, at the same time, not knowing each other was doing it, both of us had really wanted to do something that could get our industry shooting again and producing again. And both are on the same online directories where people can go and find people who can shoot as their locations or properties as home, and their talent and their families and their friends as talent. And while we don't want it to be a place that, you know, a substitution for production in the future, but we do like that, of course, it's a solution for right now and an option, not even a solution, it's just an option for right now. So, you know, I think
there are some artists, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are some artists that are doing that themselves as well, right? They're sending out, you know, Dana Hersey, for instance, the very first week that we were sort of here, I got an email from him saying, send me the product, we can do this, you know, we can still produce for you. So I think that's a solution on a couple of levels.
Absolutely. And you and I have had this conversation. We did not invent anything. We are not taking credit for anything. This is 100% you know, people in the community are doing this, whether they are showcasing what they can do online or not, it doesn't matter. This is an option that's real for everybody in our community. And we meaning the Workbook and Create in Place, we're just trying to provide a portal for people to go to so that it became more of a reality. Like when Steve said, I just want a portal for them to come to see all of these stock shots. It's the same thing. It's just one place to go, one or two places to go to see how this could actually work for your brand. So it's positive. So I've enjoyed being solutions oriented and putting out those type of messages, you know, and I feel like our community has really rallied together and come up with, you know, I keep saying this too, but it's only been 8 weeks and look at what we've done as a community. Like give us another 4 weeks and it'll be incredible to see what comes next.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of really does bring me into how are you all marketing your businesses right now? I think we've covered it to some degree, but then there were, you know, talking about scheduling and goal setting and business tasks and self-generated work. You know, Richard, you really talked to me about and today about staying on task and self-generated. Do you make yourselves lists? Do you put it on a schedule? Are you adhering to that, making sure you get up at a certain time every day? Like, how are you, you know, keeping yourself on task? Because you seem to be very deliberate, which I think is really smart.
Right.
Well, for me, deadlines are really good. And so either if I give myself a deadline or if somebody I'm working with gives me a deadline, and that was the nice thing about the 36 days of type or any other kind of Instagram feed that is doing kind of a daily thing, then that kind of keeps you going. And I honestly, I fell behind on it as I was working on assigned work. Well, I think I got to like the letter X and then fell off for a while because I didn't have the time to do it. But that's one way. One way that I keep track of my time is I have this little stickies, the Post-it notes on the Mac on my desktop.
That when we were sharing, I noticed that because I used to use stickies and you have them, like a lot of them.
Yeah. So I here, let's see if I'll share my screen for 1 second.
I mean, we know what stickies are. So, but I just meant, you know, so you create these, the stickies have times on them. Oh, it has dates.
Yeah, like that right there. That's just me kind of keeping track of my time.
Oh, and, I see.
Yeah, like I know that I'm sure there's software to do all that and stuff, but that's how I do it. And it keeps me on task a little bit, keeps me from kind of like just wasting the whole day away, just looking around online or whatever. And so it keeps me on task. And it also, it's good for me to know how long it takes to do something so that when someone asks for an estimate, they see something that I like or that they like, and they say, we want to do that. Give me a price on that. I can have a little bit of an idea of how many hours it took to do it. And so.
Oh, that's great. So Steve, I want to go to you. How are you managing, you know, sort of that same element and creating tasks for yourself when, you know, for you, it's a lot more shut down in terms of creation, right?
It's interesting. Years ago before I was married, I had a roommate who was a fine art painter, and this guy named Dave Burke, really beautiful work. And we talk about how I asked him, how does he get creative and be inspired? And he sort of debuked this myth that like artists are just inspired and they make a painting all of a sudden. And I shared a studio building with him, and he would go in and make 30 paintings in a row. And maybe the final one is something he would put in a gallery and show. And we talked about this book called The War of Art, and Stephen Pressfield. And it's about having, as creatives, we really do have to have a routine, and it is work, right? You have to have a schedule. You have to discipline yourself. You don't just like Darren, you went and did this work. You went and walked, and you like kept doing it and pounding the pavement, and you're going to continue to do so. It doesn't just like happen, right? And so for me during this time, I've really found it important to have my same routines, wake up early, start the coffee. I do the artist way journaling, which has been a really point of inspiration. If you haven't done this book as a creative, the artist way is just phenomenal. Gets you to journal every day. I wish I was doing it every day. It doesn't happen all the time, but exercise and I try to bring my camera with me now as I do go about, just because, you just find little moments every day. I think I've really missed that. Obviously, we want to be really careful with, but if I'm going to the grocery store, I'm not, introducing some new idea with that. And then I love that's where this Unstuck Collective really was a great way. I've realized a part of my brand is connecting with my subjects. And early on, I thought, I'm not going to stop doing what I do, which is to connect with people. And so the Unstuck Collective has been a great way for me to contact people and just see what they're up to, connect with them. I did that with my clients as well. And then I've made lists of people I want to connect with, and been really diligent about okay, let's be consistent about this, just like I would in my normal life. I'm just not doing it with the camera right now. Doesn't mean I can't do that personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. Jamie, I see you nodding. I wondered if you wanted to add anything there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we have a handful of clients. Like most people, when this happened, and again, like Darren, we do a ton of work in sports, and that just went, so, but we were fortunate in having a handful of clients that, for projects that had already been budgeted, that were already underway, and thankfully they decided to keep going. So that work, it'll often go out to committee. So we'll produce a phase of the project that goes up for review, takes some time. So that comes first. Then second is scrambling because when we first started doing the masks in the Teespring stores and the merchandise to support the, I figured I had to form a new company, because some of these opinions, they're my opinions, they're not my client's opinions. So we need to kind of separate church and state. And so I had to do all that without being able to get on the phone with anybody, set the stuff up, produce the creative, get it up, all of this, run it through all of our social stuff. And, there's not a social platform that we don't love. So that's going out on everything. So that's kind of second. And then third is kind of putting together those commentaries that go to our client, the Emma mailings, the posts on social that are about us. So we kind of have put, that, those are the three kind of tiers of getting through the day. I would like to, as I'm sure everybody here can do, pants.
Get dressed every day, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
And I'm telling you, I know we have a number of dog lovers here. Dogs are good.
Good. Nope, I think every one of us are dog lovers here. So I have a new puppy. I've talked about it way too much on this, but he's definitely a joyful element. Darren, I wanted to switch over to you because I want to hear more from you and talking about how you are scheduling yourself, how you are,
it's been weird for me because a lot of what I do is, if I'm out covering a golf tournament, shooting a golf tournament for a client or something like that, I'm out of my office or hotel room or whatever it is from 7 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. And I don't have a quote unquote work schedule. With the to-do list of things to do in the office, I got a bunch of things that I want to get done, but sometimes I'll have to wait till I'm back at the hotel that night or have a couple hours in the middle of the day, and it's kind of loosey-goosey. Whereas nowadays, it is kind of like Steve said. I'm up in the morning early, every morning. I'm making the coffee, going through a routine, going for a run in the neighborhood or something like that. But then sitting down with a to-do list. And it could be anything from, okay, it's time to work on an email, or that you're finally going to send out if and when it's time to send one out. You know, who knows when that's going to be. Or it's time to put your stock stuff together. It's time to go find all of these portraits that you have shot, but you've just been sitting on your hard drive for the past however many years, that you need to get up to a stock agency or something like that.
That's a really good point, in that, you know, are you compiling a ton of stuff that's just like ready to roll the minute it feels like we're back to, do you have a list of stuff like, okay, I did that email from, I've done,
Yep.
You do?
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to get this emailer ready so that when it looks like people are starting to come back and it's not, quote unquote, too soon anymore, it's ready to go. You know, things like that. But the biggest thing for me is that, like, I actually treat this as, this has been 6 weeks of me having an office job, of having a structured life where I can accomplish all of these things that were just kind of like, well, if I get back to the hotel at a decent hour, maybe I'll do an hour's worth of this or something like that. That's what my life used to be like. And for now, I'm just trying to take advantage of the fact that I can structure things a little bit better.
Well, that leads us right into my favorite part of every webinar, right? Which is our silver linings. You know, the thing that has happened because of this pandemic that is surprising or surprised you in a positive way. You know, I think I'm a Pollyanna at heart, so I always go towards the kindness and the nice stuff. And I do think that that's always the way that we should end these webinars. So I want to just go through all of you guys and talk to you about adding, you know, what's your biggest silver lining right now? And I'd love to start with Steve. I seem to be going in the same order this whole time. So that wasn't purposeful, but it's just maybe where you are on my screen. So I'm looking at a sort of a Brady Bunch screen. So Steve, you're right here to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think I did want to also just mention that part of this, I think, is taking the pressure off ourselves to be productive all the time. I think I've had to catch myself. And it's been great to accomplish things, but also a part of that silver lining needs to be just like, hey, I can just relax. And it's forced me to like take my dogs on walks more, and me and my wife are able to spend more time. Like I've discovered trails in the Bay Area that I literally spent 15, 20 years and never saw. And I've just been so inspired by, you know, not being productive, but simply just being outdoors, you know, and finding areas that are off the beaten path because it's too crowded in the normal parks, and spending time with my wife and my puppy. It's just, yeah, that really, I think we need to check ourselves sometimes and not put all this pressure of like, oh, produce. I mean, we need to survive, but I think that's the balance, right? We have to have this other component. And if you don't get anything done one day, fine. 2 days, great. A week, you know, like it doesn't matter, right? We're in a pandemic. This is a serious time. People are dying, and we need to take that pressure off ourselves. And so I've been trying to remind myself as much as possible.
Well, and there was actually a question that I hadn't seen, and it's specifically for you. That you mentioned a book, The War of Art, and advice for artists.
Artist's Way, yeah.
Artist's Way. Are there any other books that you know, all of you, when I get to you, you can add in any books that you would recommend people reading right now? Because I think it's a time that we can read too. And we really never have talked about that before. So are there any others, Steve, that just come to mind that you would maybe want to share?
I mean, I will say that The Artist's Way is something that if you've read it once already, you should reread it. It's kind of a book that you can kind of cycle through, you know, your life in a consistent way. And I have been doing that, but also there's just master classes and the podcast. I mean, it's really been, it's kind of almost too much information sometimes. And so I haven't like dove into too many more books because of that, except for like just nonfiction or fun stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what's keeping me most occupied.
Okay, so I'd love to go, Richard, you're down here for me. If you could talk about your silver linings.
Sure. Yeah, I like everything that I've been hearing, and I think it's definitely in these kind of times, it really is important to figure out how to turn it into a it's not exactly a positive, but to take something good away from it. And one thing that I talk with my students about is just working within sometimes limitations can be a good thing. Like if you think about making, if you had to do a full page illustration and all you had was masking tape to make that illustration, it could actually be kind of cool. And so I think that it's important to recognize the limitations and try and use them to your advantage. And I mean, we're going to get through this. And I think that I want to look back on the time and know that, and have some good, know that I did everything I could and rather than only sit around and watch Netflix. And nothing against Netflix, because I will watch it tonight. But I'm also trying to use the time and trying to find things to do that are good. And again, like with my students, I'll talk to them about watch more tutorials, and spend some time doing that and try and learn something. And it's really inspiring just to hear all the people speaking today, all the different approaches to it. And it's a real good reminder. And the Artist Way is something I had done years ago, and I wish I had that book with me now. But I think I'll try and start doing the journal, the morning pages again, and get back on that. It is important.
It's on Kindle, ebook. You can download it still.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
So yeah, some kind of a routine is good. I'm way out in the country near a lake. And so in the morning, I generally go for a long walk and I make some phone calls, catch up with people. I have some friends that are sick with this virus, and it's good to just catch up with them and check in, and do that. And so it's a ritual. And when I'm back in Brooklyn during my normal times, I work from home. And for me, it's important I like to get up and go to the gym or something and come back to work. I don't like to just wake up and start working. I need to have a little bit of a separation. So anyway, I love really what I hear from everybody. Thanks.
I'm going to move over to Jamie now. Jamie, you're down here for me. Could you maybe give us your silver lining? I noticed that we now have some guests. I would assume that's Amy.
Yep.
Thank you for making that comment earlier, Amy, so that I could share that number with everyone. But Jamie, if you would, maybe, I feel like your silver linings might be sitting next to you.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the bit, I think that is similar to what Richard was just saying. I don't want to go through this and not rise to the occasion. I don't want to go through this and not be selfless. I want to give. I want to be compassionate. We have lost friends and family through this, as I'm sure we all have. But it's the kind of person that you are at the end of the day. If you're willing to put others before yourself, that I think getting to the core of what we are as human beings is really important. And yes, dogs.
Well, I think that's very well said. Darren, I just saw your text message, so I want you.
I'm still here.
I know you are, but Darren's laptop is dying and it wasn't charging. And so before he disappears, let's get to you.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I want to sort of, I had something at the tip of my tongue. It was to echo something that Richard had talked about, and now I can't for the life of me remember what it is. But my silver lining has been that I've been able to spend a lot more time with my wife and with my son and our two dogs, and that we all haven't killed each other yet because we are out in the real world, not together as much as we probably should be because I'm traveling or she's traveling or whatever. So that's been one. And the other one is that I've been realizing that I can make this work from here, that I like being in town. I like working locally, and it seems like I'm getting out and meeting people and talking to people where when we do come out of this, I think I've already made relationships just through this project, just walking around and talking to people. Somebody's the head of a design firm that I shot playing pickleball in the street, or another woman owns a dance studio in Austin. So it's just things like that I might be able to turn into something more and not have to be on the road so much. So that to me is a huge silver lining. And the thing that Richard said, and I had said this to my wife probably the first week we had been locked down here in Texas was that I don't want to wake up on July 1st and say, what the hell did I do for 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is? And so that's sort of been my guiding principle is, yeah, it's okay to take it easy, but you still want something to show for it when this is all over.
It's really interesting that I agree 100%, although I had never thought of that, quite frankly. I can't think about what's on the other side of it or how I'll feel about how I behave because I never even have gotten that far. But what I do like about what you said specifically, Darren, is that you're talking about during a time where you can't physically connect with people and you can't do what you normally do, that it's the connections that are the most striking thing, which I find like what a juxtaposition, but I just, well said, is all I guess I'm trying to say. And so I'm going to go to Heather, your silver lining. I feel like you're petting one right now next to you. You, mute, you are on mute.
Thank you. So you don't have to hear my dogs. You know, last week and the week before, I'm sure you've all seen it, but somebody sent, a lot of people were sending around that beautiful video of the Goodnight story called The Great Realization. And if you haven't watched it, you should Google it. It's a beautiful, beautiful video. It's just about 4 minutes long. And it talks about hindsight is 2020 and the irony of course, we're in the year 2020. And the great realization is that we were, and I've said this before, operating at a level culturally and professionally at ways that were not sustainable. So who are we going to be? Who are our next best person? Who will we be when we come out of this? And I'm not saying we all have to transform, but for me, the silver lining is, you know, I'm taking some time to figure out who my next best person is and what does that mean for me as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as a professional business owner, as a community person in the community. And I'm liking what I see. I like the opportunities that I'm getting right now to connect and meet new people and be there for a community and help shape things for the future for everyone and be a part of really important conversations. And the people we're meeting along the way are amazing and inspiring and incredible. And when I look back on what this is, I want to be proud of my participation and, you know, who I've become. So.
Absolutely.
Well, so I would agree with everything that everyone has said, and I always lean into my gratefulness. That's always my silver lining in general, but specifically during this time, grateful that you guys all take time to talk to me. Grateful that, you know, I have, you know, Richard, you hit me right in the head with, oh, I have friends that are sick, right? And so I'm very grateful that that my family and those around me are not, but it's always present in my mind that I'm going through this in a very stressful way. I think we are all having a whole level of stress that we never really imagined before, but I always sort of feel that balance of I'm not sick, I have a roof over my head, and I have so many things to be grateful about. And so my silver lining is just to always feel grateful for the blessings that I have, including, you know, this webinar, my job, which I love, and those things. So I won't bog anyone down anymore with and I usually weep at least one time on these calls, and I'm gonna just avoid that. So I'm gonna cut that whole line of thinking off and just thank you all from the bottom of my heart for taking time today, for sharing your stories with us. And we always end in a very odd way, which is like, oh, is this on? Is this off? So we're all just going to wave goodbye. And then Jim is going to just shut it off halfway through so that our audience isn't like, are they still talking? We're not. This is the end. And thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. And I want to always say a big thank you to Jim. He is the tech director at Workbook, and he makes everything run really smoothly on Fridays. And for me always, but for you guys on Fridays. And so just a big thank you to him. And thank you to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.